Hi, welcome to the Interaxis YouTube channel, interaxis.io. Today we're going to talk about stablecoins, and we're actually going to do that for several days because there's so much to dissect and get into about stablecoins. We want to remind you that we keep bringing these videos out, we keep having other topics and other content to discuss, so go ahead and subscribe so that you get these as soon as they come out, and you can take a look at what we're talking about, what we're finding interesting, and how we put it together, and make sure that you understand why some of these topics, some of these decentralized finance, cryptocurrency, blockchain topics, coupled with finance, are important to you. So go ahead and subscribe. Follow us on Twitter at Interaxis8, and you can see when these are coming out as well, see what else we have to say. So now we're going to talk about stablecoins. Stablecoins are such a big deal now, especially in the blockchain decentralized crypto world, and we want to talk about why that is. And to do that, as with everything else we talk about here, we got to move back a little bit and talk about where this all started. And it all started with Big B Bitcoin, right? And the idea of Bitcoin was, of course, to create this decentralized economy, this ability for me and you and other people, wherever they are, to transact in a currency without having to go through banks and without having to be under the purview of the government deciding how much something is worth, how much currency there is. So Bitcoin said, remember, there will only ever be 21 million Bitcoin in the world. We've actually controlled the supply, and we've controlled how quickly that supply comes into being, with the idea that we are going to transact. What does that mean? That means, as we've said before, Adam and Ron have some sort of transaction. I buy goods from Ron for, in this case, call it, $100, and we've gone through what this iteration is, right? If I get the goods, Ron gets the $100, I might write him a check. Ron has to put that check in his bank right now. That bank has to confirm with my bank that I actually had the money to begin with. Then they say, okay, wire us the money. They do that, and they put it in Ron's account. That's that's how $100 goes. Now, that's real easy if Ron and I are kind of close to each other. Imagine that we're transacting in $100 million, and those goods are being transported all over the world, and this is a long, drawn-out process. The fees that go in here, right? There's fees here. There's fees here. There's potentially fees here. Right, and there's friction, right? There's friction. We talk about that in terms sometimes of time. How long does it take for this process? How long if Ron hands me something and I give him a $100 check right now, that transaction can happen right then. If it's $100 million worth of product, if it's $1 million worth of product or services or something, there's other steps we have to go through. There's purchase orders, there's invoices, there's checking, there's clearing things with the accounting and the accountants and the banks and everything else to make sure that everything is in place. That's a lot of friction. It's a lot of people to pay. And the idea of Bitcoin is, let's see if we can get rid of some of that. Let's see if we can disintermediate and take out a lot of this. And he gives me goods, product, whatever it is, and I send Bitcoin, and the transaction's done. We don't have to go through banks. We don't have to, he doesn't have to make sure I had the money to begin with, because I can't send the Bitcoin unless I had it, right? I can show him my wallet and be like, look, I got the Bitcoin here. I'll send it to you as soon as you send me the goods. So the idea was, on a global scale, we could transact using Bitcoin or using this digital currency, and that would help cut out a lot of the fees and the friction. It would also help cut out a lot of the issues we've seen, not so much here in the US, not as much in the developed world, but more in the developing world, where governments have decided to devalue their currency. They've decided to issue a whole bunch of currency, and Bitcoin said, we don't even have the power to do that. We have 21 million of these ever. So you don't have to worry about it being devalued. If anything, you have to worry about the value going up quite a bit. Okay, so that's going back a little bit to what the idea of Bitcoin was. Now, Bitcoin was kind of the first, and so it's had some growing pains. Now, of course, it's come to be an unbelievable asset, and it's shown us the way in terms of blockchain. It's gotten everyone on board. We've talked about this in other videos about how without Bitcoin, without the success of Bitcoin, we wouldn't have Ethereum and smart contracts and DeFi and Tezos and security tokens and all these other things that we're seeing, all this other technology that's being built that's actually adding to the inclusion, it's adding to the worldwide participation. But of course there's some issues with Bitcoin being utilized as this worldwide this worldwide ability to actually transfer money, this transfer mechanism. It doesn't always work. Part of that sometimes is speed, right? Part of that is valuation. So again, we're talking first about why we even need a stablecoin. And here's some of the reason why we even need something that is akin to a stablecoin. Okay, so again, we'll go back to this example. Hopefully you can see this, Adam and Ron, but now it's going to be Ron's company and Adam's company, okay? And again, let's go to this. Ron is sending me goods, and we've signed this purchase order and everything, and we agree that it's going to be, $1 million worth of goods. So he's getting the $1 million, I'm getting $1 million worth of goods. We've agreed to that. We've signed a contract. Now, it might take him 30 days to get me the goods. It might take him 60 days, whatever it might be. So he's going to give me these goods, whatever I'm buying. I might be buying lumber. We'll say we're buying lumber. So he's going to give me the lumber, and then it might take 30, 60 days, right? Because there's got to be an invoice that he's got to send me. It's got to go to accounts payable. They have to cut a check. They have to check with the contract to make sure it's correct. Do we have money in the account? Yeah. Okay. Now we're going to issue a check. So this might be a 30 to 90 day process, and that's after we've received it. When we agree on it, that might be a 30 to 60 day process where Ron says, okay, you need lumber. I have to go cut down the trees and process and everything else. Okay, but we've agreed on the price. Now, if we agree on it's $1 million worth of lumber I'm buying, that's pretty easy, because the idea is the dollar is not going to devalue so much in this period of time. That could be anywhere, it could be almost half a year before Ron gets paid on this order. We agree that we're going to denote it in dollars because we don't think the dollar is going to devalue significantly in that time. We don't think that the value of the dollar is going to go up significantly. So I'm pretty sure that when I pay him $1 million, it's going to be the same. It's going to be worth the same when I send it to him as it is today. We don't have a big issue with that. The problem becomes, let's say instead of $1 million, we settle on 100 Bitcoin, because today Bitcoin is worth $10,000. Did I do my math right? Yeah. So today's Bitcoin is worth $10,000. So this is roughly $1 million worth of Bitcoin. So we decide it's 100 Bitcoin. Okay, and this process starts. Well, let's say that somewhere in here, like at the 60-day mark, I finally get my goods, and Bitcoin's gone from $10,000 up to $12,000. Well, now we decided on 100 Bitcoin, but now Ron is getting $1.2 million worth of Bitcoin, right? The value has gone up in this time. So let's say this process starts. Well, Ron's stoked, right? Because he's going to get $1.2 million, because that's what we decided to denote it in. We didn't denote it in dollars. We denoted it in Bitcoin. So I get the goods during this process. Let's say the price of Bitcoin goes from 12,000 down to 8,500. Well, now Ron was so excited, he thought he was going to get $1.2 million worth of Bitcoin, but the value has gone down, and now he only gets $850,000 worth of Bitcoin. Same 100 Bitcoin, right? But he gets a whole lot less. So a whole lot less in terms of value for it. So this process, the idea of using Bitcoin isn't that sustainable in terms of a medium of exchange, of being able to send goods. There's always the example people use of, can I buy a cup of coffee with it? What if the price of Bitcoin goes from $9,000 to $10,000 while I'm trying to transact and buy the coffee? Because we know that the Bitcoin process can take, anywhere from 10 minutes to an hour to actually process that and finalize that transaction. What if the price goes way up? Imagine that's like a $4 cup of coffee. Imagine it's $1 million or $100 million worth of goods that you're transacting, and you're using Bitcoin to denote it. You can't really do that. It's not sustainable. That is why we, in order to still use these rails, to still use blockchain, to still facilitate and take out a lot of the fees and the friction involved in the banking system and the governments and such, you have to use some sort of cryptocurrency, but it would be ideal if that cryptocurrency were worth roughly $1, right? So if you could say this crypto is worth $1, we can denote it in dollars, but I'm going to send you cryptocurrency instead of trying to go through my bank account and such. And once you do that, of course, it's programmable, meaning we can lock this into a smart contract, right? That says it's not going to take 30 to 90 days anymore. It's going to be almost immediate. When these goods hit and there's a GPS sensor that says I got them, and I say yes, I received them, hit it on my phone, whatever app, whatever it might be, we could have these dollar coins go straight to Ron, and he doesn't have to wait this 30 to 90 days. Okay, because they're locked in a smart contract. It can be locked in escrow, whatever we want to do with it. Okay, that needs to be programmable, but we can't have these valuation swings. So that brought on the need for stablecoins. The idea that people were transacting in it, they were trying to transact in Bitcoin, but with the wild swings in value, you couldn't run your business on it. You couldn't run your life on it using Bitcoin as a medium of exchange because the value fluctuated so wildly. So come to the idea of stablecoins. Now, which is a whole other topic that I'm going to delve into quickly here, and then we're going to take several other lessons, several other videos to kind of explain how the approach has been done. So the idea of stability is one we have to address because it's very important to talk about the stability of a dollar. Now, currently, the US dollar is kind of the world currency. It's the medium of exchange. It's what everyone in the world kind of transacts in. Unless you're transacting only within your own country, if you're transacting internationally, it's pretty much in the US dollar. Okay, so the idea of stability of the US dollar is very important, and it's what the Fed, the federal bank, looks at. And that's kind of their job, is to help maintain its stability. So what do we mean by stable? What is the value of it? And this is going to be very rudimentary, so the economists out there, anyone who's really into this, I apologize. I'm not getting too far into the weeds of the Fed, and I'm not trying to make this political and not saying what they should do or shouldn't do. I'm saying at its very core, at the basics, here's kind of what they're tasked to do. And obviously they have to look at so much more. The idea is, let's take $1 and look at a kind of a basket of what that $1 can buy today, or what $100, probably easier, what $100 can buy today. Okay, how much bread, how much milk, how much is a haircut? Right. This is, again, very rudimentary. How much is, and obviously depends on how good your haircut is, right? How much, maybe gas. All these things, we want to see what a dollar is going to buy today. And there's a certain supply of US dollars out there at any one time. And we're not going to talk about M2 and M3 and M4 and the velocity of money or anything like that. But the Fed looks at what does $100 buy today? And then they have to look out into the future. And they have to say, based on all this economic data we have, based on everything we're seeing, what do we think is going to happen to goods and services? Because remember, we're on this supply and demand chain, right? This is how we kind of decide on the value. Here's the supply of dollars, here's the demand for dollars. They're trying to figure out what is the demand for dollars going to be in the future? How much are people going to have to buy? What is the value? Are people going to need more bread, milk, haircuts, gas, whatever else there is? What is the demand for dollars going to be? And therefore, what do we need to do to the supply curve to maintain this? And if the Fed says, well, demand for dollars is going to be, way up here, the Fed says, oh no, we need to move the supply curve. which might mean we need to put more dollars into the system because we don't want the dollar to get too valuable. Okay, we don't want there to be so much demand that the dollar gets too valuable. What does that mean if the dollar gets too valuable in relation to like this basket of goods? It means that the price of those goods actually goes down. That's probably a good thing for everybody else. It means that we really wanted dollars. Dollars are the most important thing. Milk and bread and haircuts and gas are not the most important thing. Dollars are the most important thing. The prices probably go down. Well, the Fed doesn't necessarily want that. They don't want so much demand, so they have to flood the supply, right? And in order to flood the supply, they have to, as we say, print more money. If you print more money, you kind of meet that demand. You say people want, $1 trillion out there. There's going to be a need in the future for $1 trillion. We need to pump that money out there so that the dollar, the value of the dollar doesn't get too high. Goods don't go down in price. We need to keep that relatively stable. That is really the job of the Fed, and they want to maintain about 2 to 3% annual inflation. That's what they're going for. So what is inflation? Inflation means that next year, this bread, milk, haircuts, gas, instead of costing $100, will cost maybe $102. So that's what the Fed is trying to get at. They want this steady kind of inflation going up. They don't want wild swings. They don't want deflation. Okay, they want this kind of steady moving up of the value of the dollar. So if they see much less demand in the future for dollars, right, that means this number is going to go for up to, like, if they say, oh man, it's going to be $105 for this basket, we need to pull that back. We need to take some dollars out of the market, right? And so they will take dollars out of supply. If they need to supply more, they supply more. And that's really the job of the Fed, is try to keep this price stability. They want to keep this basket of goods, whatever those goods and services are, at growing at roughly 2 to 3%. That's kind of what they want to do. Now, of course, part of that is we want to, if you get bigger, we want to avoid some sort of depression, right? They don't want a huge recession. They don't want a global or a U.S. depression to happen. And the depression might happen if this goes from $100 to $150 all of a sudden. All these goods are $150 all of a sudden, and people don't have money to buy them. All right, so because I've saved up $100 in my bank account, just because these cost more doesn't mean I'm getting paid more. Okay, and that's where we start to have problems. So again, and we're not talking about current political climate, we're not talking about current economic or financial climate, we're just talking about the idea of stability and what the Fed is trying to do. Now, because the US dollar is the global world currency, everyone in the world is kind of based on, all goods and services are priced kind of based on whatever the Fed decides global supply and demand is. So stablecoins, the aim so far, for the most part, has been we need stablecoins. We need programmable money, right? Money that we can attach to things like smart contracts. Money that I can send you back and forth, or we can send back and forth without having to go through the bank, right? Because you can't necessarily Cash App and Venmo millions of dollars, right? So we need programmable money that is worth roughly $1. Okay, and then the rest of it is tech, semantics, all that. How do we get it to be worth $1? But that's the goal. That's the goal of a stablecoin. How can we get something that's programmable so I don't have to go through the banking system? I can just send it via my Ethereum wallet or my Bitcoin wallet, whatever crypto wallet I'm using. How can we use the crypto wallets and those rails to send what is essentially worth $1? That is the goal. That's the point. That's why stable coins were created. Now, we have to ask a question: is it right to have it be worth $1? Is it, and we'll go into this in other videos, is it right to have the stable coin, because essentially we've pegged it to $1, is it right to have the stable coin have its own basket of goods, right? So essentially act like the Fed, but do so in maybe an algorithmic way. That is another option, another opportunity out there. For the most part, it seems like most of these stable coins have gone with being pegged to a dollar, because that's just what the world transacts and that's what people know, and it makes it easier to create this programmable money. Now, as an opinionated aside, if you want to be highly decentralized, if the goal was to be decentralized, you're still centralizing the decision on what the value of everything is with the Fed, right? Because the Fed is determining the price, what the value of the dollar by virtue of their actions, and therefore you're saying our stablecoin algorithmically or technically or by virtue of custody, whatever it might be, is worth $1. We're saying we're going to leave the decisions on the value of our stablecoin essentially up to the Fed, and that's what we're going to try to pin to or peg to somehow. Eventually we might see, and we'll go through how some of these protocols work, but eventually you might see a protocol that does just this. It creates its own basket and says, we're looking at our own inflation and we're going to create our own programmable stable coin, and hopefully the world will transact on that. They couldn't do it on Bitcoin because Bitcoin can't change its supply. As we saw on the supply and demand curve that I drew, Bitcoin doesn't have the opportunity to change the supply to meet the demand. So if there's more demand for Bitcoin, the price goes up because the supply is fixed. If you want a stable coin that truly moves up and down with the value or truly maintains its value compared to a basket of goods and not based on the Fed, which is really charged with the supply and demand of the dollar really for the US economy, they're not really supposed to do it for the world economy. They're just looking at the US economy. If you really want it to be a world currency, it would have to look at a basket of goods worldwide and decide how do we want to maintain some sort of value so that internationally people can transact. But internationally, we've all decided we're going with the dollar, so we've outsourced the dollar value to the Fed, and then everyone else is trying to peg their programmable money to whatever the Fed said. Okay? So that is a bit about why stablecoins are important, why we need them and what we're going for. And in subsequent videos, we'll talk about the different types of stablecoins that are out there. We hope you will watch those. We hope you enjoyed this. Check us out. Subscribe, of course. Please subscribe. Any comments, we'd love to see those. We hope to answer them. info@interaxis.io is the email address. On Twitter @interaxis8. We have some exciting things coming out via our website, more blog posts, more podcasts coming out. We have some courses coming out we're really excited for. We hope you'll check those out, and we hope to see you in the next video.